Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the latest edition of the trade series, which is Selling into NI. Today, the webinar will be hosted by Leah, who joins us from Full Circle, and she will be taking today's webinar. We will have a Q&A at the end, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat box, and we will be able to facilitate questions at the end. So thank you very much, Leah, and I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everyone. We will be working on this webinar from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. I would maybe urge you, because it is being recorded as well, but also for your own purposes and for your own learning and development today, is to maybe just take notes throughout. So as Christine has mentioned, when it comes to the end, please put in and use the chat function so that you can ask your questions. We won't be able to ask questions and stop throughout the webinar, but definitely I want to be able to spend a little bit of time afterwards to make sure that your specific questions are answered. So if you're here today, you're obviously interested in selling into the Northern Ireland market. Just a little bit of background of myself. I've been a director within Full Circle and working with InterTradeIreland very closely, and we are the main delivery agent for one of their main programs called the Acumen programs. So I've been working with them very closely and doing these workshops for about the past 5 years. I have previously been an owner of an SME company myself, so I understand what it's like whenever you are trying to merge into a new market. And for that reason, I understand and have experienced what you will experience in trying to do that yourself. So again, feel comfortable to ask me any question that you feel is appropriate and using the chat functions again. So I guess being an SME owner, looking to explore and, think about merging into the Northern Ireland landscape. This is an hour and a half out of your day, can be seen as being quite luxurious, but sit back and relax. As I've said, take notes. We're hoping that you're going to get a plan out of this, but this is a break from your normal routine. So enjoy that, enjoy the break, and take this as, a good step forward into how you might actually plan your route and getting into the Northern Ireland market. So, mentioned before, this webinar is being recorded. Just insert any questions into the chat function and we will send a copy of the recording and the slides following this webinar. So let's set the scene a little bit. There's 3 stages of this webinar today. So first of all, we need to be clear on what selling to Northern Ireland means. We need to be prepared and we need to have a state of readiness for that. Today's webinar is going to allow you to form your thoughts and to be able to start that planning. And then the third action and the third stage of this, that you need to be able to deliver and you need to be able to sell. So we will unpack each of these stages and you will walk away with specific actions on what is right for your business today on each of those stages. First of all, let's look at stage 1. We need to look at, well, what is the landscape we're selling to? What's the cross-border opportunities? And what's the type of business information that you will need whenever you're focused on the Northern Ireland landscape? And a big part of that is looking at what the government agenda is for Northern Ireland, where policy states money follows. And don't just look at, private or contracts that will be through your own network. We also need to consider tendering and we need to look at public sector, because that is also a big part of revenue that you could avail of whenever you're selling into Northern Ireland. The second part of this is that we need to look at how you will plan for meeting the customers in the opposite jurisdiction. So to do that, you need to understand your customers' needs and you need to prepare and you need to plan. Stage 2 is not unusual. It's very much what you would have done in your home market. So there's a lot of transferable skills from what you've done in your home market to what you will bring to Northern Ireland. So don't want anybody to think that today is about something that's completely new. It's not. It's looking at a new landscape. It's looking at how you fit into that landscape. It's then looking at what you've done already in your home market and how that can be transferred over. And it's also looking for the niche that you can provide in Northern Ireland market and therefore how you can stand out. The third part of today will be looking at how we communicate the methods of selling today, because that's a mix of online, it's a mix of offline, and it's also changed since COVID, and we need to make sure that we have those right stages in place. And then we need to look at, well, when we're at the sales meeting, how do we actually walk away with what we need? So these are the three main themes and stages of today. What's important to understand is that you're not looking for the whole pie. In Northern Ireland, you're looking for the slice of the pie. It is a smaller jurisdiction, and we're going to look at really what those cross-border Northern Ireland opportunities look like. But remember, when you're looking into any particular new export market, but particular cross-border coming from Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, you're looking for a slice of the pie. So therefore, focus, category sector research, and then focus on what your customer needs are and who that customer is will allow you to just understand that it's a slice of the pie and not the whole pie. But taking a step back, when you look at, Republic of Ireland versus Northern Ireland, it is much different, and we need to look at what's different and what's the same. So first of all, it's a much smaller geographical area and a much smaller population. So where you have 5.1, 5.2 and increasing in Republic of Ireland, although Northern Ireland will be increasing, it's much different in size. So 1.9 versus 5.1 as an average. Yes, natural birth is increasing. Yes, it's both a growing and an ageing population, but we have less people who would migrate in and out of Northern Ireland. But I really want you to think about the fact that that is a positive. The fact that there is a smaller jurisdiction to work to, it means that most people will have a network which is quite close. And therefore, selling into Northern Ireland means that your relationships mean more, developing those relationships mean more, but ultimately research and development into establishing who those relationships should be with is much more important, because once you're in with them, they tend to stay with you. So again, think about what can I bring to the table that's different? How can I research who are the best people that I should work with and focus on? And then how can I nurture that relationship? Because it's a smaller network, it means that those people will tend to rely on you a lot more. So it's a positive stand if you're coming from Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland. I also want you to think about a really important question based on what are the top 5 industries in Northern Ireland and what is the Northern Ireland government agenda focus. So number 1 is to increase manufacturing. So if I was a business today looking to get into Northern Ireland from Republic of Ireland, and I know that I could bring something to the table, for example, in manufacturing, the question would be, what would my service or what would my product do to increase a company manufacturing in Northern Ireland? Second would be, how could information technology be used? How could I support that from a company in Republic of Ireland moving into Northern Ireland? So think about either manufacturing, IT, or do you have something within the green agenda? Or is there something that you can support in tourism or potentially health and social? Now, there are a lot of other industries very similar to Republic of Ireland, but just be aware that these are the top 5 industries and where the Northern Ireland Executive have placed a significant amount of resources and revenue in order to boost these industries. So therefore, the point being, where policy is stipulated, then money, public sector and private sector will flow thereafter. As mentioned, there are a lot of other Northern Ireland industries. My question for you today is, where do I fit within this landscape? If you have experience within your home market, absolutely take that into the same market in Northern Ireland. But you really want to understand the full profile of Northern Ireland. So we have a significant amount of wholesale and retail trade, manufacturing, real estate, human health and social work activities, public administration and defence, construction and education. But subcategories are really based around a significant amount of professional services in Northern Ireland. We would be seen as one of the go-to cities, particularly in Belfast, Derry, with regards to, you know, how you would incite to have foreign direct investment coming in for either that's professional services, which is in fintech, or it's professional services, be it on trade. But if you look at all of the different categories, and you will get the full slides beyond this webinar, just think, where do I fit in the landscape? How do I take what I've done in the home market to then transfer it over? But place yourself as to where you think you need to be placed within the Northern Ireland landscape, and then you base your initial research around that. But if you've managed to do something in the home market, you will absolutely be able to follow suit on that in Northern Ireland. But we just need to see where we need to amend it and tweak so that it actually fits the Northern Ireland profile. One particular organisation I want to mention, it's called the DBEC. It's the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor. This is designed to be able to close the Dublin to Belfast corridor, okay, where that would have been seen initially as information technology. Yes, it's still being seen as that, but it now is an organisation within itself which has an ambition to become a leading economic corridor in Europe. So we have InterTradeIreland, which is supporting this webinar today. We have a plethora of support from InterTradeIreland. And as part of this webinar, I'm going to go through what some of those supports are. And I have the links in this presentation and it will be sent to you. I would absolutely urge you that if you're not already engaged with a consultant or on a particular programme with InterTradeIreland, you take some of the supports that I'm going to go through today and you register for them. InterTradeIreland is one of the easiest agencies that I have worked with, and I have worked with them for over about 25 years across the island of Ireland. So take the supports from InterTradeIreland, but in addition to that, look at the other agencies that exist, and one of them is the DBEC. So if their ambition is to create an economic corridor in Europe, which is going to be about achieving sustainable growth, it's about having a highly skilled workforce and enabling an infrastructure. And that infrastructure will cover areas such as professional services, which will be foreign direct investment coming in. That's an opportunity to sell to those people. It's also an opportunity to support on their services or products. It absolutely wants to extend and grow in advanced manufacturing, information technology, life sciences, and advanced agriculture. Now, you may fit within that landscape, but remember, a lot of the work and a lot of the tenders will have offshoots that perhaps your products and services will need to fit into. So to be able to find out more about that, a lot of that will be on that website, but in addition to that, big part of that work will be done through public sector. And now, anybody that has no experience in public sector, don't worry. There's a brilliant go-to tender programme that exists within InterTradeIreland, and that will allow you to be trained and fully well versed in understanding public sectors and the tender process that exists within the Northern Ireland landscape. The other thing to note about Northern Ireland is that there has never been a better time to do cross-border trade, and that's because of the single market. Northern Ireland is in a very unique position. So from Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, there is now easier links. There is now an openness for easier partnerships, and there is now the availability for easier access. Remember, a lot of the companies based in Northern Ireland already have links to UK. So if you aspire to move into Northern Ireland as your first export and cross-border trade market, a lot of these companies are going to be able to take you further into UK. So today is about Northern Ireland, but I also want people to think about if they have established partnerships and links and an easier access to existing companies in Northern Ireland, that will no doubt at some point allow them to go further into UK. That could be a shared programme, that could be a shared contract, it could be a public tender. That is to be shaped, but you know, the saying is it's a hop and a skip and a jump into the UK. So just think about the fact that Northern Ireland is the gateway into something which can be much more favourable and much more beneficial to any company coming from Republic of Ireland. So let's look at the government agenda and the top themes, okay? Particularly in Northern Ireland and looking at even Republic of Ireland. They're very similar, okay? So, but what does this mean for your business? It means that there is a wide amount of support and vast support for an all-Ireland approach. That absolutely the Northern Ireland government want to raise industry and manufacturing, the green and the renewable energy. So for example, we need to be net zero by 2050. We need to have 80% renewable electricity by 2030. We absolutely are focused on life and health sciences. Our tourism partnership board is increasing, it is growing, and we need support and we need products and services that will help to support getting more tourists into Northern Ireland. Our Accelerate City Growth deals are about increasing industry to increase job opportunities. So if you have services, if you have products that can help grow city growth deals, or you have training, for example, to offer, then anything around skills development or anything that might accelerate a city growth deal, we want to know about that. Also, where there is consulting and legislating changes, where policies are still being shaped, we need consultants and we need professional services to help on that. And overall, the infrastructure of Northern Ireland is changing. When you look at the shared island and you look at the different, I guess, aims and goals of that, one of those is to be able to build a bridge that will run from Carlingford right through to east of Belfast. A sense of where that is actually closing. So you have the Dublin-Belfast Economic Corridor and you also have additional roadworks and infrastructure that are being built in order to be able to make trade happen a little bit easier. Now, if you want to absolutely do business with Northern Ireland, remember that a large part of our revenue and where our business comes from is from public sector. Okay, so yes, there are private sector there. Absolutely, you can go and network with different businesses and organisations, but please don't negate that a big part of the revenue and the income for Northern Ireland comes from tenders. So you must be registered on eTenders NI and you must be registered on eSourcing NI. Within your business, if there's a person, whether that's you or someone else, that can look at the particular different landscapes and tenders that happen within eTenders NI and eSourcing NI, there are a plethora of the tenders that exist and there's bound to be something for everyone. So these are the two links that you need to be able to register, and similar to any tenders that you would have done in Republic of Ireland, it'll be the exact same process. So if you have that library of information that you've used for tenders before, then you can follow suit for these particular tender sites. If not, when we come to the support that comes from InterTradeIreland, register for the go-to tender, and a consultant like myself will help you to understand the Northern Ireland tender landscape and will help you to look for suitable tenders and see what is available for you to maybe apply for now or maybe in the future. So first absolute question, going back to what I said before, where do you think your business fits in the Northern Ireland landscape? Think about the top industries in Northern Ireland that I mentioned. Think about the government agenda in Northern Ireland. Think about where your service fits into that landscape, and think about where would you source your work. So it'll be through private collaborations, it will be through contracts and subcontracts, and it will be through tenders. It'll be a mix of all of that. Also, you'll direct networking to companies where you will do your research and find out these are the types of companies that I want to engage with. Absolutely, your online brand development is key, because the first thing any of these companies, or if you want to engage with, direct B2C or B2B, they will automatically go on to your own brand or to your brand development through your website and through your social media. So you want to think about what partnerships are going to look like for you, and it's going to be a mix of all of those. This will come into the planning, and we're going to look at that now. So this is about planning for customers and taking actions. So again, think about the first part and the first stage. It's all about understanding the Northern Ireland landscape. So you can find a lot of information through InterTradeIreland, through their trade hub. You can also find a lot of information, and I will go through this with you, through InvestNI or through the Northern Ireland Business Info. And there are certain Northern Ireland agenda and executive documents that you can brief yourself on, or you can simply do your own research. But either way, there are, I guess, a lot of information that you can find it from different sources. And I'm going to give you a list of those now as we go through the planning for customers and actions. So this is all about preparation. This is your research and your development and your planning. So ask yourself the question, am I ready to start my research? Do I have the time set aside for that? And do I have a succinct plan that I'm working to? When you think about sales planning, there's 10 critical steps to it. The first thing is, how much do I want to make in the opposite jurisdiction? So sales forecasting is important. Goal setting is important. We need to be very clear on that. It's not just we throw the net wide and see what happens. We want to be more focused than that. So you're setting realistic goals in your sales plan, and you're defining clear deadlines and milestones for that plan. Your market and your customer research is based around picking a niche to focus on and building traction from there. So you want to understand your target customers, map that customer journey out, and then define what your value proposition is. The prospecting and the partnerships is really key. So you want to build a very good database for your prospect list. You want to leverage on current client relationships to see if they have an inroads into the Northern Ireland market, or you want to then identify future, current, whatever that might be, but a strategic partner. That doesn't mean that you stop. You need to track, you need to measure, and you need to adjust as you need. But the first thing we need today is to be able to ask ourselves, am I ready? And do I have the time now to research and develop this? And what support can I get to do that? So let's think about, first of all, your realistic goals. Most companies will sit down, and as a consultant, for example, I could sit down with a company and say, how much money do you want to make in the opposite jurisdiction? Typically, the answer I get is, not sure. What do you think we can make? Okay. In order to build up your response to that, you need to know the size of the market that you're going for, the overall business goals that you want for that, and the resources that you have available in your sales team to drive that. Now, we need to be aware of some pitfalls. Sometimes people can have wishful thinking and over-optimism, and they can maybe ignore their own assumptions based on the fact that they see the size of the pie. So we need to be agile and flexible to move goalposts. And sometimes people don't react or talk to customers enough. So their prospecting is based on emails, it's based on attending events, but they're not following up. There is a little bit of a push and pull effect required in prospecting, which really is about talking to customers directly and asking to meet them in their particular market. And also, people don't review and don't allow their challenges to maybe push them further. So in merging into a new cross-border market, the bigger your tolerance for discomfort means that there needs to be an element of discomfort in order to grow, but an attitude is required in order to push through. So this is actually quite an easy market to get to, but you still will have a time set aside in your business, and you will still need some resources, be that it's actual cash and it's also people to be able to develop. And if that's you, then your time and how you, I guess, set time aside within the week needs to be mapped out quite succinctly. So let's look about breaking this down into smaller parts. So maybe start with creating the milestones, and then maybe start with a 100-day plan for a Northern Ireland sales push. So review it regularly, review it weekly, get really specific and quantifiable about whom you want to meet and why. It is about challenging, motivating and supporting yourself, but also looking for external support. And then if there are other resources within your company doing this, then just be accurate in how you're assigning that responsibility. But it does need to be looked upon as a plan. It needs to be planned carefully, and it needs to be looked upon as a separate project within your company. And when you have decided that you've got the time set aside, the next thing is, well, where will I find the information? So you can do a mixture of things. You can do desk-based research, which you would have done whenever you were setting off your own business in your home market. But you're looking at websites, you're looking at LinkedIn, you're looking at personal contacts and maybe some staff contacts within LinkedIn for the companies you want to target, or maybe people already know. I will give you links to the Invest NI Business Information Centre. I will give you links to the Northern Ireland Business Info. There's also a DFE report, which is the Department for Economy within Northern Ireland. I will send a presentation through this particular webinar, and you can have a look at that. It may change, but it gives you an indication as to what the Northern Ireland landscape is looking for. Once you then start to understand that, you need to be able to plan to get your boots on the ground. What does that mean? It means through your prospecting, you need to start to reach out and ask to meet with people that potentially you have something to offer them. So to do that, you can use supports, for example, Trade Export Pathway through InterTradeIreland. And what that really will look like will be stage 1, 2 and 3. Stage 1 is researching the landscape. Stage 2 is about implementing what you had researched to say that yes, there is a market there, and yes, we have prospected, and yes, we know that these people will want to buy from us because we've reached out to them. And the third stage is about planning that for long term. So again, we'll go over some of the supports later on, but as a minimum, the Trade Export Pathway through InterTradeIreland will provide you with a consultant to do stage 1, 2 or 3. And it could be that you've already done yourself stage 1 or stage 2, and maybe you just need to go to stage 3 or vice versa. So it's not necessarily that you need to go through each of those stages in a logical format. It all depends on where your particular business is at. But you need to work methodically through a plan. So it's numbers and it's relationships in successful cross-border market. Sales is numbers, but equally it's about relationships. So what do we need? We need you to come to Northern Ireland, and we need you to engage with us as businesses. We need you to tell us what you can bring, which is different to the table, and why that's beneficial for us. So where are you going to find information about the Northern Ireland landscape? Trade journals, business publication, directories, or web research. Maybe there are service records or account files. Maybe it's through specific customers advertising and their literature. Maybe it's through government publications, one of which we will send to you. Maybe it's just your own market research services. Maybe it's about press articles or advertorials. Maybe it's professional bodies. Again, I'm going to give you the links to those. Maybe it's trade associations. Could be LinkedIn, could be Eventbrite, going to those events. It could be that there are relevant online groups that you can start to engage with, or maybe it is just about the boots on the ground and attending network events and meetups. Google will tell you most of what you know, and maybe there are others that you have used in your home market before that will work, but any of the above will give you, and probably a mix of that, will give you a good database Now, mapping out those people on your database and really getting into the right headspace as to what these people are looking for is important. So it's called mapping out your customer journey. So we need to think about how a potential cross-border customer will become your customer. How do they move from being a prospecting to a loyal customer? So great initial questions to understand and to ask yourself at this stage is, well, what do you want our product or our service to do for you? So we're starting to get into what will happen if I'm in front of this potential new cross-border customer. So what does my service or my product do for you? Which of these features are important to you and why? And again, similarly, this is going to be very similar to what you've already done in your home market. So you've done this before. So then what's your budget for it and how are you currently solving this problem? And then looking backwards, you want to think about, well, when was the last time you bought something similar to our service? Was it good? Was it bad? What makes this difference? How did you make your decision? What was the decision-making process like? And how do you evaluate different offers? So again, you're looking about what are the deciding factors that you can imagine that this particular person that you want to prospect with, how will that person choose your particular situation? And then looking forward, the next question, and which is the most important question, is what needs to happen to make this person a customer of yours? To do that, we need to make sure that we've got a very strong database to work from. So building a real prospect list means that take what you know to build out a list of people in your target companies. Okay, so you take a directory of real people. These are the people that are going to benefit from your product. You list those companies, you research what their title is, you research the importance that they have within the company and if they are the buyers. And you want to target up to at least maybe 2, 3, 4, max 5 people in those organisations, particularly if they're bigger organisation. You'll find that going to maybe just the top 2 isn't going to do it. So the larger the organisation, have more personnel that you've gathered their information on. And once you have your list, keep a track of your leads and then use a sales CRM. Now, you don't actually have to buy a CRM to use it. You may be already using one, but a very simple Excel spreadsheet. And if you want, we can send out an example of a prospect database that you can then use beyond this. It's a very simple way to be able to look at the person that you're prospecting, the company that they're working for, email, phone number, when you contacted them, when you followed up, and that starts to build a control. The control of the prospecting is really key to understand who was interested, who showed any kind of response, and then to be able to really focus on those people who have responded in some way and follow those through. And you're understanding what they want. Before you get onto the call, you're understanding what makes you different from any other supplier because you've done your research. You're understanding what risks are there in doing business with you. And if you feel that there are any risks, you remove those. Okay, to the best of your ability, you remove those, but go and have an open conversation with the businesses and say, this is what it's going to be like to do business with me and how can we make this better? What commitments will you make to then maybe keep them happy? And then again, reiteration, how easy is it to do business with you? So if people can buy online through an e-commerce site, absolutely. If people can then pay directly, and to do that, then you have a very easy banking system set up, do that. If you have certain service level agreements around the fact that they need to order within a certain time, make sure that that's all very clear on your website, on your marketing information, and on your social media. But you also want to make sure that you understand what their problems are and why you're the best person to offer a solution to that. And then you can help them solve their problem. But absolutely go to the meetings in Northern Ireland, understanding what you think might be their customer needs and have a conversation about that. It's a very good way to set up a much more trusting relationship by being open at the start based on what their needs are. I also want you to think about, we all know things have changed since COVID, and there's obviously the hybrid working, hybrid shopping, and now there's a hybrid service model and sales model. So it means the competition is much more fierce. So we do have global, international, and with online services and with IT developments, it's easier, and people want things to be made easier by just going online. So ultimately, there's much more choice for customers. And we know that industries can change fast with new technology or with changing customer needs due to emerging trends. So think about the industry that you work in. Think about what the new technology or what the changing customer needs might be, or those emerging trends. Be well versed in those before you go to your meeting or before you start your prospecting. So again, this is about shaping what you can offer and how that is different from anyone else. So because Northern Ireland is so small, we are looking for organisations and we are looking for businesses that bring new technology and bring something different to the table. We absolutely need something that will make our business stand out because we partner with you. We also want you to be able to make that easier for us by either having that online or it's a flick of a switch to do so. So make it easy for any customer, but particular if you want to partner with a company in Northern Ireland, make it easy for them to do so. So I guess it's not unusual that in any jurisdiction, people want to find the easiest route possible, and that's due to just the level of busyness that happens in any industry. But think about your customer needs online versus the mix that you will have to do with also having boots on the ground and doing field sales. So you have sales, you have customer service, and you have relationship management skills, all absolutely vital. But they become more vital when we work in an automated world. Recent survey indicated that 75% of customers still want to interact with a real person, and that's because we have sometimes there's a lack of trust if something is completely online. So the higher the value of a product or a service, and where we have a world online which has a dehumanizing, just about say that, it's stopping, I guess, us from shopping properly. We're used to pop-ups, we're used to advertisements, we're used to AI, and we're used to being able to just at the flick of a switch pick up on something and order it. But if you have a product or a service which has a higher level and it's worth more, people tend to go down to the human route. So people will want to interact with a real person. So yes, they will check what you have online. Yes, you want to make it easier, but in order to get that across the line, people will want to interact with a human. So the other thing to note is that if we don't get the customer service right, that is a key factor in people buying your products and services. And also 92% of customers will stop purchasing from a company if they get a really bad experience. So we want to get that right at the start. We also want to make sure that there's a mix of online, but we need to be able to interact with the real person. So from working with companies where online is the prevalent way in which they offer their service, the other part that we will ask those companies to do is to move into Northern Ireland with boots on the ground, not necessarily setting up an office, but just get up here and meet with the businesses that you've been working with and you've built your database from. That's really key. So people need to meet and need to see eye to eye before they will actually agree to, I guess, agree the contract or the proposal. So you need to understand their model of the world to do that. So building strong relationships with key customers so that the business can fully understand the current and emerging needs of their customers and their business, objectively measure their performance to date and not only meeting the needs but exceeding those, And I guess you're identifying specific areas of improvement in terms of customer relationship or business development so that the business can move progressively towards seeing you as a strategic partner. So think about, what is their model of the world? What do they value? How can you bring that to them? Again, similar to what you've done in the home market, you're just replicating that in the Northern Ireland market. So first, real, question around setting goals and establishing clear deadlines for your cross-border sales. So can you set a realistic goal today to start or to begin to plan for the cross-border sales? So what do you think you need to do now? Is that you need to set time aside for yourself? Do you need to identify a resource to help you to begin to plan or begin to build a prospect list or begin to do research? But what are those clear deadlines for you in your Northern Ireland cross-border sales? So even if there is a lot of information today, but even if you walk away today to think, okay, I need to think about whom and what we need to do. So based on this webinar today, I need time to think, I need time to plan, and I also need support to do that. But I want you to at least walk away with a realistic goal and establish some clear deadlines for your Northern Ireland cross-border sales. So that's the first action that you should be considering taking today. And think about using this high-grade qualification. So first of all, can you provide the solution? The competition, are you likely to win? So therefore, what is the competition? Is it only you? So for example, is your prospect dealing with only you, or are they actually dealing with other people? Likely they've had other offers, so we want you to stand out. What about timing? So for example, is it the right time to engage with this prospect, and when will the work commence? If it's scalable, so for example, if it's only one service, but is there more potential for more business in the future? On a money perspective, does your prospect have the money to be able to buy it? Are you speaking with the right decision maker? So therefore, do they have the authority to buy? And need. Does your prospect really need to do the project or business? So this high-grade qualification is called Scotsman. It's a good way as a checking mechanism before you go to the meeting to find out, will I actually win the business that I'm prospecting for? Competition is really key. So I want you to think about the top 5 benefits of understanding specifically what your competitive advantages are. If this was a one-to-one consultancy, I guess, mentoring session, the first thing I would be asking you to verse for me today is, why are you different? What makes you different in the marketplace? So I need to understand, if I was to buy from you, what are the specifics of that marketplace where you hold that advantage? You then target your efforts on that marketplace, which improves your sales. But to do that, you need to get real clarity on who your real competitors are. So it's important that whoever is focused on your cross-border sales, who are your competitors? What do they offer? What is their price? Why are you different? And then design your marketing and communications to shout about your strengths. So I often find that we're a little bit humble around the benefits to our products and services. And in order to merge into a different jurisdiction, but particularly in a smaller market, you will stand out a lot more if your marketing and your communications shout about your strengths. So what does that mean? It means my LinkedIn will have either a video or regular posts. It means my other social media that I use, be it that it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever is relevant to your particular business, it will have regularity of what makes us different. It also means that when I prospect with you, I will have a brochure, potentially a video. And if you're using videos, they're on YouTube as well, because that's the second main source of search beyond Google. But I will also have a testimonial, very similar to the company that I am selling to. And it could be still within my home market, that's absolutely fine. So you need to have that as your library of information so that before you start to prospect, you're able and ready to market and to communicate and shout about your strengths. And that means you're defining your value propositions. So what is going to set you apart from your competitors in the Northern Ireland cross-border market? So consider the following. Why do your customers already buy from you? Why do your customers buy from competitors and not from you? Why do some potential customers not buy at all? And why or what do you need to be successful then in the future? So shape what that looks like for you in your home market, do your research in Northern Ireland, and then shape what that will look like and why you will have a USP and stand out in the Northern Ireland marketplace. Customers will buy the benefits and value the product and the service features. So you'll always focus on what your product will offer those customers. So having a strong competitive advantage could be something really small, but it just reflects on the competitive strength of your business. So hopefully it's unique, or maybe it's cost effective, or maybe you just deliver a little bit more, but make sure that it's clear and simple. Yes, it may change over time because, you know, competitions and competitors will steal your ideas. So things keep moving, but supported by ongoing market research because the trends will change. But make sure that you understand and how to define your value propositions for Northern Ireland. And therefore, my second action and request from you today is, what do I need to do to complete a value proposition for Northern Ireland? Okay, you've done it in Republic of Ireland. What do I need to do for Northern Ireland? So identify your niche and define your proposition for the Northern Ireland market based on your research. Now, I'd mentioned before that there is a lot of information that you can find online, and we want to be able to stay informed. So the first thing that I would suggest is that you sign up for the Northern Ireland businessinfo.co.uk newsletter. Okay, this is an organisation that has an overarching funding from InvestNI, but this provides guides, resources, news and events. A lot of these events can be trade shows, a lot of them could be, you know, workshops, and it could be seminars and events where your business and your product and your service may be needed. It gives you a platform to speak at. It gives you the opportunity to network within your industry. So this is where you start to build the people and the prospects and the companies that you want to talk to. So once you've got an inroads into there, it's about following up from that meeting and saying, okay, I'll be back in Northern Ireland within the next couple of weeks. And, you know, we travel up and down. I travel all over Ireland. Travelling into Republic of Ireland and back up on the one day is not an issue. So you don't necessarily have to plan it too far in advance. It's very easy to be able to travel up and back and forth. But these events, if you come up to them and work out that these are the businesses that you want to network with, there are some of these happening all the time. And that's only one particular agency. There's quite a lot of them. As an example, within the Northern Ireland Business Info, you know, I took these as an example from last week. So for example, 18th of June, which is tomorrow, I know that's pretty soon, but if you go onto the same website today, you'll find out something for the next week and the next month and so on and so forth. But you have an All Ireland Sustainability Summit, okay? That's bringing together industry leaders, innovators, change makers, and it's all around evolving sustainability in the ESG landscape. That might be something that is of benefit to your company. But there are business breakfasts, there are innovation workshops, there are digital transformation. These are attended by businesses that you may want to engage with. Again, it's supported by InvestNI, so another agency to look at to keep abreast with local business news and what is happening amongst industry is to look at Invest Northern Ireland. And in addition to that, Eventbrite will run its own events. So here's an example. You've got Sustainability in Northern Ireland MSc, you've got Exhibitor Registration Northern Ireland MSc again, and you've got Funding for Growth. These are all different types of events that happen within Northern Ireland. And my message is, you've got Northern Ireland Business Info, you've got Invest NI, and you've got Register for Eventbrite. But most importantly, your main partner in looking at cross-border trade is InterTradeIreland. It has been set up specifically for that reason. And because it's at the, paramount to making sure that your cross-border works, any of their events will support you in that. So these are an example of the events. So coming up 10th of July, Business Explorer one-to-one session. That's about looking how a Business Explorer can help you to innovate. 17th of July, you've got another one, which is quite similar. Then you've got the Go-To Tender Workshop. So this is the tender workshop that I had suggested. If you didn't know anything about public sector, then this is set up for SMEs interested in tendering into the public sector. Again, they will do separate masterclasses around that. So another masterclass happening on Wednesday, the 30th of July, is about enhancing SME success in public tendering. And there's another Go-To Tender Workshop. That's just an example. The amount of InterTradeIreland events that support cross-border trade is phenomenal. So that's a very small example of it. So again, the point that I'm making is that InterTradeIreland is your partner in order to be able to get into cross-border trade, but you have other events that are running outside of that, which is either through Northern Ireland Business Info or Invest NI, or you'll do your own through Eventbrite. But either way, there is a plethora of those events happening in Northern Ireland that you're very welcome to come and network with. So the third action is, when you think about how you will build your prospect list, what do you think you need to do now? Where do you need to research? And how do you need to identify partners that will help you in your Northern Ireland cross-border market? If you want to make it as simple as possible, you can apply for the TEP, which is called the Trade Export Pathway that I've mentioned before, or you can start to assign resources within your own company and think, okay, what's the absolute minimum action that I need to take to start to build my prospect list? The bottom line is that you need to do a bit of research into the Northern Ireland landscape. You need to look at the public sector landscape through registering on e-sourcing and e-tenders NI. You also need to understand what events are happening either through InterTradeIreland, NI Business Info or Invest NI, or independently through Eventbrite. And you need to then research, understand, have a very clear understanding as to what you will offer differently, and then bring that to the table through your online brand and bring it to the table by meeting with people and being very clear on what you bring, which is different. And it doesn't have to be something that's, too difficult. It could be simple cost. It could be simple that you deliver something a little bit better, or it could be that your product is completely unique. Whatever is different, make sure that we are able to verbalize that, socialize that, and bring that to the fore through your value proposition. But your third action and the third question is, what's required now to really build a strong prospect list? Based on the fact that, you've understood your landscape, you're researching the market, you're taking into consideration tenders, partners, buyers, and you've now built a real prospect list. Now we need to look at what the actual sales structure is when you come to visit. So we really want to get laser focused now on your sales structure. So let's look at that. We want to identify partners that actually will reach the same customer. So think about helpful strategic partners. We sometimes call these complementary service providers. That could be you. So these can be built by, you can write for their publication, you could be giving speeches or seminars, providing resources, starting a network or a mastermind group where you can swap contacts. But if you want to be able to start to partner and identify partners, it's about providing complementary businesses and fostering a culture of growing together. You might actually find that you're the larger company and therefore it's a smaller company in Northern Ireland, so you can support and help them on their growth and development. So be cognizant of the fact that it's not about you offering something where a company will have to buy you. They might want to buy services from you. So this could be a quid pro quo. So just think about a partnership approach and what that might look like. And partnership approaches and collaborating tenders are a brilliant way to get a first step into the opposite jurisdiction and cross-border market. Because it means that the company that you partner with absolutely has the ability to then apply for a tender that they couldn't do before. It could be that they are a subcontractor in an existing contract, but your additional services will help them to be able to provide a wider service. So really think about some of these partners or businesses that you will network with will have a culture of growing together, and fostering that as you go forward will mean a very sustainable business partnership. And in order to then make this happen, I've created for you what would be the minimum timetable, which will be online sales, reselling activities, and also marketing. So this is laid out between the first, the second, the third, and the fourth week in any month. And even if you're not doing the sales and the marketing yourself, it's important that you understand that these are the types of activities that will and should be done on a daily basis. So marketing emails, so people whom have made inquiries before, you might start that off again then on the following day. So this is week 1, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On the Tuesday then you might say, well, I need to do some social media follow-up and I need to do some online engagement. So that's about looking at your DM messages and then going back on those. Wednesday could be, we need to look at LinkedIn. So who have we met before? And we need to reiterate and refresh those. Thursday could be prospecting and following up from your prospect database. And then Friday could be, well, I need to actually phone people and make calls for meetings, and etc. through week 2, week 3, and week 4. This has been designed in order for you to just follow it. So if you have someone in your office, if you have someone that you can rely on to do your sales and marketing, I want you to think about looking at each of these days, looking at each of the weeks, and it's a very simple process to follow. And it has been designed with simplicity so that you can easily pick it up and start to work on this for your opposite jurisdiction. The reiterative sales plan is important. So you have a marketing plan. So I'm hoping from today that you can walk away with a plan where the marketing will start to happen on that, because you'll have built your prospecting and your database, and you will start to think, how will I begin to market my services in the opposite jurisdiction? So we need to look at advertising. We need to look at a mix of social media, blogs, website news and updates. So if you approach any company, even if you approach any customer, the first thing they do is to look at your social media and your website. So we need to make sure that your brand is updated. Again, you'll have an overall schedule and you'll manage that online engagement. I'm going to go back to this. This is how you do that. So there will be elements within this that will indicate when you should do that and which days you should do that within the month. And once you're managing that online engagement, don't then negate and forget the traditional sales methods. So you want to make it personable. So you want to follow up with the engagement, be it online or traditional. And remember, this is about a balance of contact and genuine value and care. So if you get the right level of attention, then if the person feels a little bit ignored, they're going to move elsewhere because there's a lot of competition. So they'll find something else that's quite similar. But if they feel a little bit pushed, they might switch off. So again, it's about strategic thinking. It's about planning from a sound knowledge base. Keep your motivation high, and then the changes are possible from that. But this is a constant cycle of improvement. So that's why you call it the reiterative sales plan. And when I send this out, it will come with a CRM, which is a sales CRM, and you can start to populate that based on the fact that you're building up a database of the contacts and the businesses that you want to engage with in Northern Ireland, and then you follow this reiterative sales plan. And you want to think about preparing to meet customers. So it's what, it's why, and it's when. So we know the landscape, we've researched the industry, and we know why we are approaching. So we're now preparing for the individual meetings. So I want you to think about making a quick introduction. So be it that it's in person or by phone, but it's the same principles. So for you, you want to think about, you've got a summary career history, you've got your qualifications, you've got your experience, and you've got your achievements. Now, for your business, you want to think about the length of time in your business. You want to think about the track record that you have. You've got a high profile customer. You want to think about the geographical spread of your operations. And you want to think about your people and your resources. But you also want to make sure that you can bring to the table your major achievements and your awards. But the bottom line is that you need to find a way to position yourself as an expert in your field. Otherwise, you're just someone who's there to try and flog something, but that's not what you're bringing to the table. You're bringing something different, and you're bringing your experience to the table, and you're bringing a unique product and service. No matter what that is, it will be different, and have that stand out. Again, you can work with a consultant that can say, this is how you do stand out, because they might have some of that in-market knowledge. When you're making your quick introduction, be it in person or in phone, it's the same principles. So again, I would urge you to think about taking action today and thinking about, well, what are my 3 compelling reasons that someone would want to buy from me? Make it non-bland, make it impactful, make it memorable, and have evidence-based. I think testimonials in your home market are a really key attribute to have to be able to offer someone in the Northern Ireland market. They will see that someone has trusted and someone has used you before. So those 3 compelling reasons could be something really simple, but you need to be able to articulate those competitive advantage, and maybe very quickly on the phone before someone will agree, or quickly in person at an event for someone to be able to then say, happy enough to meet you again, let's talk. So you then want to be able to take control of the meeting from the outset once you get that meeting. So for example, there are 3 things that I want to do to you today. I want to tell you a little bit about my company and why I think that we could add real value to your business. I would like to find out what your problems, challenges, headaches, and maybe the aspirations of your business are. And I want to see if we can ultimately do business together. So if you have those 3 things set out for your meetings, by doing this, you have control of the steering wheel and therefore the destination. So as a minimum, and you've already done this in your home market, think about how you introduce yourself, how you introduce your business, understand the landscape that business is working within, but ask them. So it's about them and it's not about you. So I guess it's when you think about winning friends and influencing people, that was a book written in 1956 by Dale Carnegie, which is all about how do you get people to buy from you? Well, it's not about you, it's about them. Find out about their problems, find out about their challenges, find out about their headaches, and then ultimately you want to be able to stipulate how can we actually do business together. So it opens up the meeting, but it allows you to keep control of that. And when you're closing the sale, I want you to have the courage to ask for what you want. So it's the opportunity to submit a proposal, a follow-up meeting, an order. But people will often leave the final meeting, or could be the first meeting, but it's the final stage of the prospecting. They will leave it open to say, we might come back and talk in a couple of weeks, but absolutely need to close, which is, do you want a proposal? Do you want to have a secondary meeting? When will that be? And what will be the propensity, or what's the potential that you might order from us? So you need to ask for what you came for, and therefore that person needs to be able to be ready to buy for you, but you need to create that landscape for them. So I want everybody to think about, if you are preparing to meet customers in the opposite jurisdiction, and I want you to then, because we're going to move on to the chat, and I want to spend time to specifically answer your questions. But I want you to look at each of the activities that we have in front of you and ask yourself this question: how prepared am I to meet customers in the opposite jurisdiction? Do I have the resources to do this? Do I need to get support on that? And I'm going to go through the support on that too. But think about, have I done any Google or internet searches? Have I found the people, or do I know that those businesses in Northern Ireland will want my goods and services? Have I looked at other websites and social media? Do I know who my competition are? Do I have testimonials? Is the good, the bad and the ugly? So are the bad and the ugly, are they removed from my socials if it's possible? And how and whom and where do I need to make this change? Who's going to help me to do this? How can I plan accordingly? The market knowledge in Northern Ireland is really important. So we need to go to the NI Business Info, we need to go to Invest NI, and we absolutely need to make InterTradeIreland a partner in our attempt and in our then successful cross-border trade. They will have events, and there will also be weekly and monthly updates that you can then continue to be well versed in the Northern Ireland landscape. But remember, we're smaller and it's only a small slice of the pie that you're looking for. But update all of this, be checking and be on point. And then look at how you as a business owner build successful habits. What's the values that you're looking for? What's the expectations that you have of yourself? What's the expectations that you have of your business? And how do you then build those new habits of having time set aside to do the prospecting, to do the research, to do the sales and marketing plan that I have there for you? And how do I continuously build on that to then start to realise sales in the Northern Ireland market? And with the capacity of that, how do I then build capacity for the future in order to keep up that momentum? So in all of that, where are you on that landscape, and what is it you need to do, and how do you start to build a plan based on that? And to do all of this, we know that there's a certain degree of self-determination. We know that there's a certain degree of planning. We know that there's a certain degree of taking action, but we recognise that you need help and assistance in this. So based on that, as I've mentioned, move to InterTradeIreland through their Trade Hub supports. Use them as your partner. So go to their website, intertradeireland.com, for their Trade Hub. That's a link to it. But the Trade Hub will give you, it's a digital knowledge base with an easy to understand content to help your business trade internationally and cross-border. There's telephone assistance there, and there's a trade health check, which gives you specific consultancy advice, which is funded up to a value of £2,000 to provide bespoke advice on complex trade issues, if that's what your industry demands. I've mentioned before the trade export pathway, but I want to position something to you. The trade export pathway will have different steps in it. There are 3 in particular. It's broken down into various different steps, but 3 as a general, which is 1, research and development, 2, implementation, and 3, planning, so for cross-border planning. But the trade export pathway can help you understand what that Northern Ireland market looks like. If you evidence through the trade export pathway in partnership with a consultant, and the consultant does a lot of the work for you, so for example, they do the research, they do the prospecting, they get you in front of people, they help you with your sales material, they help you digitally, and they get you state ready to actually do Northern Ireland sales. Once you have that done, you can then apply for the Acumen program. So the Acumen program will give you up to 50% of the sales salary for the first year. So for example, if it's a full-time sales salary for the first year, it will give you up to €21,562,000 towards that salary. You claim for that quarterly, but you need to know that there is a USP for what you offer, but also that there is a market there for you. Now, some companies don't use the trade export pathway because they know there's a market there already. They've already done their research. They can go straight to Acumen, but you'll need to go onto the Acumen link within the InterTrade Ireland workshop, and you'll need to have a look at it to look at the eligibility criteria. If you're stuck on any of that, just make contact with InterTrade Ireland and they will walk you through it. But as a minimum, consider trade export pathway to understand what the Northern Ireland landscape looks like. Then complete that program, move on to the Acumen program, get support on sales salary in order to get someone in that opposite jurisdiction selling to their maybe contacts and doing the work that you maybe don't have the time to do. And don't negate the fact that public sector contracts are a big win for any company coming into Northern Ireland. You could be bringing something to the table that will allow two companies, one Republic of Ireland EU, one in Northern Ireland, to then collaborate together on a larger contract, but learn how to do tender, be it for public sector or be it that you just want to understand that generally. Learn how to find out more about doing tenders and how to source the right tenders for your business in Northern Ireland. Supply chain and sourcing service is another support offered by InterTrade Ireland. So I guess this is about offering businesses that are operating within the food, manufacturing and engineering sectors. That's their chance to boost their supply chain resilience with support from a sector-specific supply chain specialist. So that specialist will complete an online supply chain audit and mapping exercise. They conduct walking through of the business operation and identifying and documenting areas or opportunities for potential cross-border solutions. It offers mentoring support and it helps you by, prospecting, doing sales, sourcing, supply, or externally through B2B introduction and facilitation. So again, it's about prospecting for you. So if that's something that's of interest, that's the link and it will come through on this presentation. I've mentioned before the trade series webinars. They're really key in order for you to start to become more well-versed in what is existing within InterTrade Ireland. So whatever fits the need for your business, go to the trade series webinars in InterTrade Ireland and find out what suits your business. These are the links that I think are the most important for any business considering cross-border trade. So we're going to look at these now and then we're going to move into the chat. So the link to the main website is intertradeireland.com. For your cross-border sales, there's a couple of additional programs that are running at the moment. One is First Time Exporters Accelerator. The next then is the one that I've mentioned, which is your Trade Export Pathway. That can equally move on or independently, if you qualify for the criteria, you can look to the Acumen Sales Support Now. If you want to find out about public tenders, go to Tender is the link for that. And then I've mentioned before the Supply Chain Accelerator, and that is the program and the link to it. If your business is involved in innovation, okay, and innovation is a very wide term. So it may be that it's innovation through a process, it could be innovation through IT, it could be innovation through your supply chain, it could be innovation through your service or product. But look to the Innovation Boost program to find out, does my industry fit in that? Does the plan or do the plans that I have for innovation fit within that? But have a look at that. And again, there's an SME innovation program based solely around how can InterTrade Ireland help you as an SME to innovate in your business. There are various other programs running. One of them, for example, is the scientific research for the European Union, and there are funding calls that will run off that. But ultimately, there's a funding brochure that exists for InterTrade Ireland. And again, I would urge you to look at that, because there are seed corn and there are different investors that InterTrade Ireland have a link to if your business is ready for that stage. So based on all of that, and I'll pass you back on now to Christine, who will look at the chats and look at your questions. I want to kind of understand what's your thoughts and what's in the chat questions, and help me to help you to understand specifically what your business needs. Christine, over to you to see what's in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Leah. That was definitely a very comprehensive overview of everything selling into Northern Ireland. So I have been sharing along the way just our supports and link to the supports. So the first query was on trade barriers between ROI and NI. Now I've popped across a wee link to the Trade Hub with that, so we can take that offline, and that we can support that there. So the next query was in relation to minimum spend that public bodies would have before having to go to tender.
Okay. Excuse me. Anything below 174,000. If it's 174,000, excuse me, it will be a tender. Anything below that could be a private contract. So if you think about public sector money, 0 to 5 will be a small email, is what they will call it. It's a request for quote. Anything between 5 and 30 is a small contract within a council. Anything between 30 and 174 will be deemed as larger. That could be presented on e-tenders. Excuse me, if I throw my phone. So 30 to 174,000 will allow you to, I guess, they can advertise that on a tender. But each of those is going to be different. If it's a public sector organisation, they're going to have to advertise it on e-tenders or e-sourcing. It could be a state body, so therefore that will be on e-tenders and e-sourcing. But anything generally below 174 is deemed okay to advertise, either on its own or via e-tenders or e-sourcing. But I guess most of these SMEs, Christine, are going to be looking for something that's probably smaller than that to start off on their cross-border, and then they will build from that. So anything between 5 to 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 120, they're all smaller contracts and can be done privately. Anything really above 30 on a council public sector programme will need to be advertised.
Perfect. That's brilliant. So the next one now, it is in relation to innovation grants, so we can take that offline and get the information passed across on that. But that's all the queries we have in the chat box today. So I think we'll take the opportunity and thank you very much. And of course, the Trade Hub support is there if anybody has any queries. Feel free to reach out in relation to the cross-border trade and any other queries in relation to the sales programs that we have running at InterTrade Ireland. We will be able to help and support there. So thank you.
Can I maybe just mention that, you know, and I've said this before, I work across many different agencies within Northern Ireland. The InterTrade Ireland agency as a support is the easiest to work with. So for anybody that's thinking, how do I get involved? Just apply, because it's quite an easy application to do, and it really does help businesses in order to be able to get their first step into looking at their cross-border market. And apologies if I throg my throat because I've had a cold all week, but hopefully I was clear enough and you could hear me well and good. Thank you so much.
That's perfect. And just to note, the slides and a recording of the webinar will be shared following the webinar. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and thank you again, Leah.
No worries, very welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great day.